25% of the currency was created last year. The government-sponsored inflation numbers are fake. The national debt is unpayable. The petrodollar is going belly up. The petrodollar collapsing is going to be the kick-off event in addition to putting fuel on the inflation fire. Biden attacking Saudi Arabia recently is nuts and effectively guarantees the end of the petrodollar. Fed Ponzi meets real finite world. The Fed has essentially turned into an evil entity that is destroying the lives of the bottom 75% of society. The staggering debt they are creating, which only increases the inflation and destroys the dollar even more. It's a debt house of cards. We'd be in a very severe recession if we only print 20 trillion in the next 12 years. Current living standards have been maintained by doubling the debt about every 8 to 9 years. So we need about 30 trillion in the next 8 years just to stay about where we are in terms of living standards. 20 trillion in 12 years ain't gonna cut it. When a country doesn't make anything anymore, except more currency, the end game is dire. $20 trillion in the last 12 years, and probably 4 more the next year, when for the first 215 years of the country, we only racked up $9 trillion. This Fed has been out of control since 2009. Same with ECB and BOJ. Everyone knows that our system is collapsing. So people are trying to get what they can out before it does, and new laws and rules and stuff are made. We all know that with all these COVID bills, it will continue. They have been printing money in the world, and the system knows it. We will be in a massive depression that will have stagflation in it, hyperstagflation. Banks are paid to sop up QE cash from the asset markets and destroy it by depositing it in bank reserves at the Fed. They are paid IOER in perpetuity for this work. This is why QE creates inflation slowly in the real world but sends asset prices soaring. Stimulus, UBI, is QE for the masses, and banks can't sop up the cash fast enough. Too much cash chases too few things to spend it on. This is why the stimulus is inflationary in the real world and traditional QE is less so. Wait for MMT later this year and the programs used to require it. To the moon, followed by infinity and beyond, then Venezuela life in the US. The entire $1.9 trillion will be pissed away in short order. 6 months from now, there will be a great hue and cry for the government to provide more economic stimulus, fiscal policy, and for the Federal Reserve to provide more liquidity in monetary policy. The next print would have to be over $2 trillion, or people will start getting angry. Here is how it works. The bill costs each man, woman, and child in America $5,937, and many get $1,400 in return. The difference is $4,537, which enriches the Fed's friends. See how this perversion works. The good news is it was created from nothing. The Feds are God by creating something from nothing. They are the money gods, in charge of the magic money tree. Printed money will be put to use forever more obscene and ridiculous programs. Reparations for joggers, trans in Pakistan, bridges to nowhere, more and more weapons for the military-industrial complex, more prisons for people that take their mask off, government school waste, university diversity cesspools, pod housing for indebted graduates, EV idiocy, green scams, etc. ad nauseum. The US dollar collapse cannot come fast enough. The Fed was put in place to make sure inflation happens. It's not by accident. It's by design. Runaway inflation has been with us for years, but since the Fed cannot raise rates to keep pace with it because it will crash stocks, they conveniently leave out rent, home prices, stocks, tuition, health care, food, gasoline. I mean, what the hell else is there? Wages. And they'll never rise again because companies know when they do, rates will have to rise, plus they need the cash to keep buying back their stock to keep the charade alive and well. The Fed should be abolished and markets left to their own devices. Period. End of story. Welcome back to the Atlantis Report. You are here for your daily dose of the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Please take a second to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and don't forget to also hit the notification bell. John Williams of Shadow Stats uses the old 1980 formula, and real inflation is at 9%. This inflation formula used during the Jimmy Carter era gives real inflation. Ronald Reagan changed the formula to make his economy look better than it actually was. If they admitted inflation was 3% or more, then Social Security costs would skyrocket as seniors would demand a 3% COLA increase on their Social Security payments. It would also cause massive shortages in raw materials like lumber and silver as corporations hedge for increased costs. That is why the BLS and Federal Reserve lie about inflation. If they told the truth, everything collapses. Everything that people need is going up. For many, prices are starting to extend past means. And this thing is just warming up. For soon, those who are not holding tangible assets will be holding an empty bag, while those with tangible assets will be targets for the grasshoppers. Inflation is the plan. To impoverish Americans in order to institute communism in America. Now they are weeding out military people who don't fit into the agenda. Once that happens, there will never be a way to restore America to the land of the free. It won't be long until all your money goes to food, gas, insurance, and taxes. There will be nothing left for you. 100% taxation and the state handing you food, gas, etc. through rationing will come next. Socialism is transformed at 100% taxation owning nothing into communism, and they have even told us this already. Impoverishment is the plan. You will starve to death, and you will like it. They might toss you a bacteria burger occasionally. Or a crap sandwich with no bread. But any payments to you will be strictly worthless, and you won't be able to buy anything but what is on the approved list. The money will be strictly like ration coupons. This collapse is coming, and we all know it. It will happen slowly, then all at once. Our leaders know the world is about to go bankrupt, and a reset is inevitable. They hand out stimmy checks and increased unemployment benefits prior to the big event in order to make friends with their citizens by handing them breadcrumbs, which has accelerated the reset, as planned. When this all goes down suddenly, they can say we were trying to help everyone, this is a big accident and we blame it on COVID. When you give citizens money across the nation, it's designed to make it look like you're their benefactor who must, through necessity, implement socialism immediately to save everyone. Fasten your seatbelts. Change is coming. Whether you look at the debt, the money supply, the old way of measuring inflation, or any of the more classical Austrian methods of measuring inflation, in the US over the last 50 years, what you come up with is a number between 8 to 10% per year, on average, for 50 years. Real GDP growth is simply calculated as nominal growth minus inflation. If we used any of these proper measures of inflation, what we would find is nominal GDP growth around about 4% per year, minus even the conservative 8%, would show an annual contraction in real GDP of about 4% per year on average, for the past 50 years. This is why they lie about inflation. Because if they told the truth, it would be obvious to everyone that the US has been in a deep recession for 50 years. It's only obscured by the additional debt taken on and the inflation and other statistics being deliberately distorted and misrepresented. That's the truth of the matter. The real culprit here is interest rates. The only way the Fed can control runaway inflation is to dramatically raise interest rates. That can't happen because it makes the federal debt unserviceable. Ergo, they're stuck, with the only thing left to do is monetize the debt and lie about inflationary pressures. How long do you think this can go on? If you are preparing correctly, you should be thinking quite conservatively here. I think the time frame to the global realization of how screwed we are is closer than we might think. The Fed is expected to lower rates after having deprived savers of a reasonable return on their hard-earned financial resources for years in order to compensate for and support the risk-taking behaviors of market players. Those mostly responsible for the current economic debacle that exists. This is neither normal nor equitable. Lots of anger out here in the real world. The Fed is Powell-less. Unless it's QE for the people. Time to go all in on gold, silver, and mining royalties. With low interest rates, the banks are already operating on razor-thin margins due to low interest rates. If you are on razor-thin margins and the defaults start to pick up, the banks can be in a lot of trouble fast. There is already some evidence that either a large bank or banks are experiencing liquidity problems due to the continuous and ever-increasing repo operations. If banks start going belly up, what does that do to the confidence that the public puts in banks keeping their money intact? And we all know that our whole system is based on full faith and trust. Confidence crashes, the system crashes. Debt will matter to the consumer, who is 70% of the economy. The consumer is tapped out with interest rates so low for so long. Now they're having trouble paying the interest to forget the principal. The next couple of years is going to be a ride, especially if MMT kicks in on top of the permanent repo bailouts. If everyone would understand that our money is always born as a debt at source, then we would operate a system where we allow money to die as debt, not by being paid down but by being written down via payoff with money created as is. This is what happens when it is born as debt. It is merely created at the ledger. Then the laws allow the money to be owned by that bank, who can then take the real asset, the land, and the houses. When the inevitable effort to pay down such created debt is not possible due to economic restraints born in society such as no waged income available. Only subsidized made-up jobs by the government via corporations are available, stealing everybody's lifetimes. Massive rounds of quantitative easing only made the rich richer. They did nothing for 98%. The bond market will kill municipalities raising taxes to the inability to pay the debt. Example, Detroit bonds overtook taxes to pay the debt back when auto manufacturers went bankrupt, and government takeover led to them not having to pay taxes. The loser Detroit and pensions. It's a con game. The banks know that economic collapse is inevitable. So does the US military. The sum of all fears is the tsunami of debt needed to protect private and public malinvestment in financial rather than productive endeavors. The market needs higher clearing charges due to supply and demand imbalances. Papering over the swamp makes the alligator meaner and not any easier to contain. I wish everyone a little part of the trillions in bailouts spanning the globe. All this money printing is technically implementing after the fact of slavery. When people begin to say no more and refuse to allow themselves to be used to serve the dark forces' agendas, then things will change. This is where we are, looking at the problems created and searching for solutions. It's time to outsmart those who do not have our best interests at heart. The reason for the creation of credit unions was to give individuals control over what happens to their money. And I have been informed that there are banks established that do not have connections to federal banks and the stock market. The dark forces have been trying to outlaw the credit unions because their plan to economically destroy our once great divinely inspired nation cannot succeed if people are not tied to the large banks and corrupted stock market. Everything takes place in this never-ending political theater slowly because the script is written in episodes as things develop, and agents of the deep state have to coach the players before they act day by day to ensure they play their parts convincingly. It makes great entertainment for the masses and journalists. Thomas Jefferson once said that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. Invest in wheelbarrows and in wheelbarrow insurance. Keep saving and stacking. I will.